Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started just in the interest of time. Welcome everyone. This is our kickoff event for the Grad Thesis Slam competition for this year. This is the first in a series of 4, maybe technically 5 in our preparation series because the final part of that is 2 practice sessions, and you can choose one. We'll get into that later. But this first session is all about what the Grad Thesis Slam is and how to get started. So if you're not sure you want to compete, if you might want to compete in future years, if you just want to understand what this competition is, that's what we're going to get into today. So there we go. Okay. So my name is Kelly Oman. I'm Assistant Director of Research Communication in the Office of Graduate and Postdoctoral Affairs and PhD Plus. And I'm here with my colleague, Sam.
Hi, everyone. Sam Lake, also Assistant Director of Research Communication in the Office of Graduate and Postdoctoral Affairs and PhD Plus team member. As Kelly noted, we really look forward to this event every single year. We do a lot of communication training, whether it's for grant writing and fellowship applications or presentations or a research communication series. But the Grad Thesis Slam is a little bit different. It's really engaging, and honestly, for us, it's a lot of fun to work with all of you. So if you're here to compete, and we'll go through all the details of that, or you're here just to gain some additional communication skills as you're thinking about TED-style talks and other things, we're excited to have you here and look forward to working with you over the next, it'll be, I guess about 2 months, almost exactly, Kelly.
Yes. So we're thrilled that you're all here thinking about this early. Of course, you don't have to go through the preparation series in order to compete, but we've seen that the best presentations in the final competition are from people who've been through this preparation series and have done the work along the way. It's great to do this ahead of time because it is a challenge, but like Sam said, it's a very, very fun challenge.
Yeah, so for today's schedule, just so you can see where we're going, we're going to start with a little bit of an intro. You've probably heard of the 3-minute thesis before, which is the model the Grad Thesis Slam is based on. We'll get into the details of both of those and differentiate them a little bit. We'll hit on the guidelines. We'll talk a little bit about structures of presentations. And then we'll actually play 2 videos. We'll give you a couple past examples. As a group, we'll break those down just so you can kind of have some best practices and a little bit of a concrete idea on how others have approached this in the past. And we'll continue to do that through the next couple sessions as well. We'll leverage some past examples to give you some inspiration and ideas for the future. And of course, if you're competing in this event, we'll go over the judges' rubric so you know how to get as many points as you possibly can and how you're going to be evaluated. And then we'll talk about next steps, some suggestions that we have for you to reflect on after today's session to start making some kind of meaningful progress leading into the session that we'll host in about 2 weeks. And of course, we want to answer any questions you have. So we'll review some FAQs that we know people have typically asked before. Some of that are repeat information that we kind of highlight as we go through the presentation. But then we're just going to open it up and let you ask any questions you have. And we'll record this so you can go back to it and refer to it as well.
Great, yeah. So a bit of history around this competition. Like Sam said, the Grad Thesis Slam is based on the 3-minute thesis model. So the 3-minute thesis was first held at the University of Queensland in 2008, and it spread from there to universities all over the world. It's a very popular competition, and popular for a reason, because it's fun and it's challenging and it's really great experience for grad students to share their research in a very brief way, which is something that you're going to be doing in, interviews, job applications, just chatting with your family. It's really a great skill to distill your research down to a very quick little snippet. And that's what this is. So this was envisioned as a skills development activity to challenge grad students to explain their research to a non-specialist audience. That's the other challenge, not just this condensed version, but the audience is made up of people who are not experts in your field and might not be experts in any adjacent field. And today, this has spread to over 900 universities in over 85 countries worldwide, having these live competitions. Some of them moved to Zoom during the pandemic, and some of them have kept that virtual component. At UVA, we did a Zoom competition with pre-recorded videos, but have since last year returned to the live competition with a live audience. and we'll get more into the details of the components of the competition later. The reason we don't call ours the 3-unit thesis, the reason we call it the Grad Thesis Slam is because we've changed the rules a little bit from the 3-minute thesis. And if you make any changes, you're not allowed to use that trademark name. So we call ours the Grad Thesis Slam. And basically the rules that we've changed are to make it more inclusive for all disciplines. In the original competition, you can use one static slide. And we've changed the rules so that you can have some animations in your slide, and you're able to use a prop. You're able to use sound if that's relevant to your research. So there's a little bit more flexibility there, but be careful with that flexibility. You don't want to do something just because you can. So throughout this preparation series, we're going to talk about your strategy for everything that you include in this very brief presentation, the visuals, the movements you make, the words that you use. And these modifications that we've made have just made it possible for you to do a little bit more if necessary, if it's helpful for you. Yeah, so we're going to highlight those changes more in today's session. So why would you participate in something like this? It is a big task. You know, you can't just stand up in front of an audience and share your research in 3 minutes without practice. It takes a lot of work and a lot of practice, and sometimes facing some nerves presenting in front of a live audience. But we think it's such a great opportunity, and a lot of people have competed in this in the past and gotten a lot out of it. So what will you get out of it when you participate? Well, you get practice talking about your research to non-specialists. Like I said, that's useful in so many contexts. You learn how to distill your thesis down to what's most important. So maybe you're like in the thick of your research right now and kind of losing sense of what that main point is, the main takeaway. This will help you kind of recenter your thoughts around what you're doing and really communicate that one main point and figure out what is most important in this and what's most important to other people, not just people in your field. You'll receive guidance and a chance to practice public speaking, including supportive feedback sessions. So if you don't intend to compete, you're still going to get this benefit. We're going to have these practice sessions. We're going to have a chance for you to work one-on-one with me and Sam if you want to just practice public speaking. So if that's something that you want to work on, like I said, even if you don't want to take that to the competition level, you'll still get a lot of practice there. And in the preliminary round, as we'll talk about, you'll also get a lot of feedback from the judges that we have for that. And you'll get a chance to meet grad students from other disciplines and learn about different academic norms and research practices. So at our final competition last year, we had people presenting from all different fields, and as everybody was presenting and getting ready for the competition ahead of time, doing the practice sessions, they got to know each other and got to learn about each other's research. And that was a really valuable thing for them to get feedback from somebody outside of their field on what they're saying about something that they're used to talking to people in their own field. I lost track of that sentence. You can see how practicing public speaking really helps. So you're so used to talking to people in your field about what you do. This is a chance for you to talk to other people who are also, you know, very, very smart, very practiced in research, who might not know all the details of your field, and they can give you a sense of what's not translating or what's jargon, what's not. And it's just a fun way to meet people. And of course, the big reason you might want to participate is cash prizes for the winners, up to $1,000 for first place.
And prizes for all finalists and bragging rights, of course, as well, too. So, no matter what your reason is for being here, we want to talk about eligibility and kind of requirements related to participating in the competition itself. So the competition is limited to UVA doctoral candidates or equivalents. We know we have some SJD and other degree programs out there that are equivalent to a PhD. You have to have passed your qualifying exam. So that's one of the requirements for competing in this competition. And we do have some other requirements and some recommendations. So with those, all interested students, we do strongly encourage you, as we've already said, to participate in all 4 parts of this series. So from getting to know what it is and starting the process all the way through to getting feedback before the prelim stage, we do really encourage you to do that through this format of the preparation series. A new requirement that we do have this year, it's been in the emails, on the websites, but we want to draw specific attention to it, is that competitors must do 1 practice session either with Kelly or me as part of the group session or as a one-on-one consultation. And you can set those up as an advising appointment with one of us. It'll take max of about 20-25 minutes, but we want to make sure that we can give you some initial feedback and some support and make sure that there's not information or questions that you haven't got answered or information we haven't been able to share with you about your presentation or about the event itself. This was actually a strong endorsement and encouragement that we received from judges of both the prelim and the final competition last year. They were noting, how polished a lot of these presentations were, and they wanted to make sure that everybody had access to getting feedback from us before they advanced through. For the preparation series, we just want to note that everyone is welcome. So if you're here because you just want to gain and grow your communication skills, that's great. We're happy to have you. You do not have to participate in the competition itself. So we welcome you to stay, even if you're a master's student, you don't meet the requirements or anything for participating in the competition. Please take advantage of all of these workshop series that we lead. There are some really important dates. We're going to continue to highlight these through the presentation, but if you're planning to compete, please, please, please go ahead and block out some of these times on your calendar. We're going to host the preliminary competition during the week of April 1st to the 5th. We'll largely schedule these from about lunchtime to about 5 o'clock. We'll follow up with specific dates and times based on the judges' availability and your availability once you confirm that you want to participate. The final competition, it's going to take place on April 16th, and we want to make sure that you block out 3 to about 5:30 that day if you're planning to participate in the competition, or you just want to come and root everybody on. We're sending you calendar invites if you register just to make sure that that is on your calendar now. And of course, you can get access to all of these dates and information on the website. I'm going to drop that into the chat just so you have it handy as well. So a couple kind of presentation guidelines. The first one will not be surprising. All of our presenters are capped at 3 minutes, and that is exactly 3 minutes. Any competitors that exceed that will be automatically disqualified in either round. So if you are presenting, for instance, in the preliminary session, and you see the clock ticking to 2 minutes and 59, go ahead and stop. And we'll talk about that more as we go in the future, but we want to make sure that you stay eligible for consideration. The presentations, well, they start whenever you start. And that's defined in any way. If you start speaking, if you make a gesture or a movement that's part of your presentation or performance, if you start using a prop, playing an instrument, anything else that really starts your talk, that is the beginning. And that's when we will start the timer. And of course, judges, both within the evaluation side of this, but also in timekeeping, their decision is final. There's no potential reviewing it, going back, discussing it. Once they make a decision, that is the final decision for the competition. For prop slides and media, and we'll share some examples as we go through today's presentation. For the slides, you're allowed 1 singular PowerPoint slide, and that is it. You do not have to use a slide though. If you do performance art, if you would rather tell a story or do something like that, you're welcome to. You do not have to have a slide behind you. You could potentially even have a blank slide. And we've actually seen some really cool videos of how people have used a plain white slide in the background as part of their presentation. Animations are allowed, but they do have to be limited to animations that are available in PowerPoint. Videos and audios, as Kelly mentioned already, are allowed for this competition. It's one of the reasons we moved away from 3MT. But out of that entire 3-minute presentation that you have, those video and audio clips cannot exceed 15 seconds. As mentioned a little bit, presenters are allowed to use props. There is a process, though, of getting confirmation and notifying us that you intend to use them. Part of the justification has to be that it's important or directly related to explaining your graduate research. and it must be approved by us. So if you're planning to use a prop, go ahead early on, email Kelly and me, let us know. If you email us, we can give you back written confirmation. If you come to a practice session and you have it with you as well, we can talk through how you're planning to use it, get all the details. We're very likely to approve any props that you want to use. We just want to make sure we know what they are before you walk up on stage with them. Each presentation begins with a title slide that'll have your name, probably your photo on it, definitely the title of your presentation. And with that, we'll provide a template and design those for you. We'll just ask for the required information that we need. And then in terms of other things you potentially could have on stage, we do not allow note cards. We don't want you looking down at anything. We also don't want you looking behind your shoulder and up at the slides. We want to make it easy as possible for you to engage with your audience. And with that in mind, we will have, at least for the final competition, a confidence monitor in front of you. So you know exactly what's on the screen behind you and you don't have to turn around to look in any way. That's some of the overall requirements, a little bit about what the requirements are for your presentation and what you're allowed to have. And what we want to do next is we actually want to play 2 videos for you. These are both presentations that are from 2019. The first is going to be Carolyn Roberts. She was actually the first place winner during that 2019 competition. And Kelly's going to screen share over to that in just a second. And then the second one will be another finalist from 2019, Meng Yang Lu. Kelly, when you're ready.
As you can see in the photo behind me, I work in the field of automotive safety. In this photo, I'm positioning 2 average male crash test dummies. It took me until over halfway into my PhD to realize I had never worked with a single piece of female data, whether it was a crash test dummy, a computer model, or experimental injury. And here's the problem with that. Recent field studies have showed that belted females have 47% higher odds of sustaining severe to fatal injury than belted males in the same exact crash. Some of you guys might think this makes sense. Females on average are smaller than males and therefore might be more vulnerable to injury. But here's the problem. This statistic I'm showing you is for a male and female of the same age, height, and weight, which tells me there's something intrinsically different about males and females, and that our safety restraints are not protecting females as well as they're protecting males. Because of this, I decided to completely change the focus of my research to address this problem. The goal of my dissertation is to now understand what it is about females that makes us more susceptible to injury. In order to solve this, first I needed to collect experimental female injury data. There isn't much out there. The data that I've collected is now the largest female injury data set that exists. With that data, I was able to compare female data to male data, and guess what I found out? They're not the same. After that, the big question is why? What about males and females make them different? What sex differences contribute to injury tolerance? There are a lot of different sex differences, and some of them are very simple. For example, breast tissue. But some are much more complex. Male and female joint flexibility are different, and female joint flexibility changes throughout the menstrual cycle and pre and post menopause. In order to evaluate all of these differences, I decided to turn to human body computer models. So what I do is I implement these sex differences one by one and evaluate the injury tolerance. My goal is to figure out which sex difference has the greatest effect on injury tolerance. And that's where we need to collect more female data so that we can most quickly and efficiently close the gap in injury tolerance and fatality risk between males and females. Now, often when I talk about my research, people feel some sort of discomfort with how much discrepancy there is between males and females. Improvements in automotive safety have saved the lives of males and females, so please, please, please keep wearing your seatbelts. However, it's critical for the automotive safety field to recognize that our restraints are less effective for females. While my research is only a first step, I truly believe equal protection in vehicles is possible. I think it's about time we got started on it. Thank you.
I majored in astronomy. They would always say, "Oh, that's romantic. Do you just sit down on the grass and stare at the stars?" Well, usually the real picture is, in the middle of the night, I'm sitting in front of my computer, trying to find a bug in my code, and I'm running out of coffee. I am working so hard because I'm worried about the fate of the Milky Way, our galaxy. Let's put it this way. We have the sun, and it's great. But can you imagine that somewhere in our galaxy, there is a single star that is as luminous as 10,000 suns. Just imagine it. In its short life, it transports huge energy to the galaxy and also supply the galaxy with new material for next generation. Those are what we call massive stars. We know what happens in their death. They become a neutral star or a black hole. But what about their birth? How can they even exist in the first place? My thesis aims to help answer this question. The good thing is, there are already two major theories established. But how do we determine which one is correct? I can't just grab a massive star, lock it in my lab, and ask, hey, could you play a video of your birth, which is about 1 million years long? The only way is to test the very imprints predicted during their birth with what is observable, the baby massive stars. In particular, I compare baby massive stars at different evolutionary stage, just like comparing human babies of 10 weeks and 20 weeks. What do they look like? How fast do they grow? Do they have siblings? So I spent a couple of years learning how to find the baby massive stars and how to take photos of them with powerful telescopes in a magical way to capture the information I want. Then I decipher the hidden messages behind the photos and use them to test theoretical models. For example, I find the baby massive stars at a certain stage and absorb as much material as the sun every 1,000 years. So the theory that doesn't allow such feeding will fail here. Spoiler to my thesis defense. As far as my observations go, both existing theories can explain something, neither explains everything. And also we find some new trends that are not covered before. It's really like playing a puzzle game, and we are trying to add more and more constraints from observation piece by piece. And hopefully in the near future, we astronomers can solve the puzzle and unveil the secret of massive star birth. Thank you.
So what we'd love to do is actually get your thoughts. So Kelly and I've watched these a couple times. I was even scribbling down a couple of notes, but I'm really curious to hear from all of you. What strategies and strengths did you kind of recognize within either or both presentations? And we can kind of start this off, and we can use the chat to do this, or you're welcome to raise your hand or unmute yourself. Kind of curious about how they engage the audience. How do they hook you as you were watching them? Any thoughts? Anything you thought was a strength? So Natalie's already in there. Yeah, humor.
Yeah, I agree with Natalie. I was also going to say humor, that there were several points. In the second one, it was a little bit more in the beginning that directly grabbed you, but in both of them throughout, they had multiple places where they were lightening the mood and just getting people to connect and laugh, which was good.
Yeah, great. Yeah, the second one, when she talks about what it actually looks like to do the research. I see one person said the personal anecdote about research, that kind of showing you doing the work and also making that funny, that kind of does double duty to engage us with. It's not just kind of abstract intellectual project, it's actually somebody doing work, and that personal story is compelling.
Yeah, the second presentation, I love the contrast, right? You know, she describes this idyllic, like laying in a field, looking up and kind of dreaming of the stars, and then immediately grounds that with, well, that's not the reality. You know, I'm looking at code on a computer and bugs within that code. And for many of us, depending on your audience, you know, stating like bugs within the computer code is something that, unfortunately, as graduate students, we can probably relate to if we do any kind of numerical simulations or statistical analysis.
Very high level overview, does not say much about progress of the overall research. Yeah, could you say more about that if you want?
Hi, thanks for showing these videos. I was only wondering, because previously you both mentioned that non-specialized audience. So was this the focus of these 3-minute presentation to make it like very high level so that other people just kind of get the very core idea of the research they're doing? Because usually when we go to conference and anywhere where the audience are specialized, we kind of go to very detail. And I know there is not so much time, but how much detail do they have to get, and does it have to be like this high level, so that everyone can get it? But also, it keeps me wondering, this is nice, but how feasible are this research, what results they're getting, and how novel they are, those kind of questions that came to my mind. But yeah.
Yeah, that is a great question. And that's really what this prep series is going to focus on, is how to determine what you should include, how much detail you should get into, because that's really the big challenge of a 3-minute presentation for a general audience. You have to really figure out what will a general audience care about and want to know, and what do you need to include in order to make sure you're being faithful in your representation of your research, to make sure you're being honest about your results and the purpose of your research and what you want to achieve, while also kind of cutting out everything that is peripheral to that. So like a lot of the more detailed findings that you have, a lot of the more abstract details of an argument that you're making, like that might be really core to your research and really key to include in an academic presentation, but can be left out in something like this. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and by keeping it broad, especially at the beginning, and you notice that, they do funnel down into kind of what they're working on, at least the specific problem, the objective maybe they're working on, and kind of a cool aspect of the results and what they're contributing to. But the reason it starts so broad at the top is you want this to be welcoming to the entire audience of non-specialists that are sitting in the room. And you don't want to automatically kind of, put up a wall essentially between the framework of knowledge that they have entering that space and what your research connects to that they're aware of. You want to create that bridge to welcome them into your research. And then as they understand what you're working on, you'll start to get into a little bit more of the complexities and the specific details, the things that are going to continue to captivate them and interest them as you go through the presentation. But yeah, just to reiterate what Kelly said, in 3 minutes, you can only get so deep. I will put a little asterisk here of, as we talked about the benefits of participating in the series, you may or may not give another 3-minute exactly presentation forward in your graduate career or your professional career. But the way you captivate and bring in your audience and the way you present your research and make it welcoming to them is something that we see graduate students doing, a year or two later when they're defending their dissertation, or they're going out and giving a job talk at a university, and that's to a much more broad audience. And they're using a lot of these skills and techniques that we talk about through this prep series in those presentations. So just know that even though this short version might take that approach, it doesn't mean you can't leverage these tools and skills to be able to give one of those slightly more technical presentations in the future.
Thank you. I understand and realize the importance of kind of giving the high level overview and how like engaging people, the audience, which is which is nice. So do you maybe you both will maybe share in the following sessions or maybe following slides, but it would be nice to have kind like an outline or overview of what is expected in a 3-minute presentation, like maybe motivation or engaging the audience, and then going a little bit deeper and sharing overview of the results, something like that. Yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you.
We absolutely will within the next session. Yep. We'll give you that framework, or at least some inspirations toward that framework. Kelly, I want to be mindful of time. I know I've got a couple things scribbled down, and I know we got a couple other responses. Anything else that you're seeing in the chat that you want to highlight, or anything that you saw that you want to reiterate?
They both started with something surprising, either that it took her half of her graduate career to realize she hadn't seen any female data / models, or that she's not spending all her time gazing at stars. Yeah, I think that In a later session, we're going to talk about opening tactics to get your audience engaged right away. And both of them use the tactic of something surprising, something unexpected. And I think it's great to understand what the audience might have as a kind of preconceived notion of what you do, and flip that so that we think, oh, well, maybe I should listen to this more. It's one way of getting interest. Yeah, Sam, what did you write down?
We can still see it with Carolyn's presentation on the top here, where she's using a photo that actually has her doing her research. So we don't even, as an audience, seem to imagine what that environment's like. We can literally see her within that image. And we can't see it. She's actually kind of bolding one of her key takeaways, like the percent, that of injuries or something like that, if I'm remembering right, Kelly. I also love that Carolyn highlighted the fact that her data and her presentation might make people in the room uncomfortable. Like, she's acknowledging that tension. And I think that actually makes listening to her and her talk even more welcoming, because she's like recognizing that tension that might be in the room. And she does leave us with kind of this hope, it's a very memorable message of, it's about time that we start doing this. And it kind of gives you hope looking forward. The second presentation, I mentioned some of the things, but there's, she tells us, imagine this, and then she describes something, which in some ways is kind of akin to Carolyn using that photo up in the top slide. She actually gives us something to envision and imagine. And she also relates it with a really nice analogy of stars to babies, something that many of us are probably familiar with in some way, whether it's siblings, with other people in the audience, with kids, et cetera. So we can kind of have those examples and those analogies as she's talking about the evolution of a star. I will note, and we've heard this from some of the people actually participating in this series, the last bullet we had on the previous slide was actually about what was forgettable or not memorable. And I bet if we asked you to describe like the methods and stuff that they were actually using, that would have been one of the things that you don't hang on to. It wasn't a specific detail. It wasn't something as memorable, describing methods, going into kind of analytical details, the analysis, stuff like that. That's typically something within these presentations that's forgettable, and it's, in some ways, it's kind of a waste of your time to really get into those nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit now about the timeline, how to start preparing, how to start thinking about your participation in this. The preparation series, we have today's session, and then we organize these every 2 weeks instead of every week. That gives you time between sessions to get some work done, to, of course, do all the other work you need to do, but to take little steps towards complete presentation. By the time at the end of March, we have these peer feedback sessions. So next time, we're going to talk about engaging your audience and telling a compelling story. So talking about those engagement tactics and how to figure out what to include, what not to include. We're really going to get into that more there. And then the third session, we're going to talk about slide design and presentation skills. So all of the other stuff, peripheral to just what you're saying, the visuals, the movements, all of that. And then we'll have those practice sessions. Let's see. And then we have the preliminary round and the final competition. We, again, have spaced these out so that you have time to polish up your presentation after the feedback sessions. And then in the preliminary round, you're going to get feedback from the judges, and you're going to have another chance, if you make it to the final competition, to polish up your presentation again for the final competition. So keep that in mind. You don't have to present in the final what you present in the preliminary round if you make it through to the final competition.
And we do see people making modifications exactly because of the preliminary round. They get great insight and recommendations from the judges. They go back and actually make improvements and tweaks. And Kelly and I even work with the finalists during that period too, if you have questions or want any additional feedback, or would like our notes, because we try to capture notes and recommendations from all those reviewers for all of our presenters. For the preliminary round, you're looking at the French conference room with the new Capitol Hall. This is where we host all of the preliminary sessions that we can. And with this, there's obviously the big TV screen at the back of the room. You would be standing in front of that top photo, in front of the TV. And we typically have about 4 judges plus Kelly and or me within those individual sessions. As we noted before, we'll let you know what those dates and times would be based on your availability and the judges as well. For the final competition, this will be the last time we host it in this building, and because they're going to demolish it in November. But we love it. We continue to go back to it. It's UVA's Alumni Hall, very conveniently located right on Emmett Street, across from the Central Grounds parking lot. So if you're inviting family, friends, others from off grounds, it's easy to get to. It's got a beautiful outside venue. Kelly got to enjoy that with everybody last time while I was in a small conference room with all the judges. We need to switch this time, Kelly. But that'll be from approximately 3 to 5:30 on April 16th. Like we said before, please block that time on your calendars now to make sure that you're available.
Yeah, and that outdoor reception, we had treats and refreshments, and there was fantastic chocolate torts. So I I recommend attending just for that alone. I had about 20.
No, I didn't get any. Okay, I digress. What you're really here for is hearing about things like this, the judge's rubric. We have 2 sections within the judge's rubric, and both of them have 4 elements. I'm going to step through those fairly quickly. I'm going to highlight some of the key aspects. So for comprehension and the content that you're sharing about your graduate research, within that motivation, the criteria for that is really focused on this is really focused on the appeal to your general audience, right? It's why they should care, what the motivation is behind your topic, your problem, your question. This could be your motivation that you're describing within a story of what gets you really excited to do the work, but it needs to be clearly communicated. For intellectual significance, obviously, there's a reason that you're doing your research and the importance of it to your academic discipline. And it's really important that you tell us and tell the judges what that reasoning is. And you want to do that clearly. It can be exploration, it can be answering questions that are really driving the discipline. It needs to be clear that you articulate what your contribution is to what you just described as the significance of discipline. So you want to say that your research is working towards these specific questions or these specific objectives, so we understand what your contribution is. And then finally, you do have to organize this in a way that's kind of clear and logical to follow, right? You need to set up a reason and justification why it's important, describe what your contribution is, and kind of move us from a beginning hook to like describing the important things that we need to know to an end of what you found or what you're encouraging or asking us to move forward with, what our use or empowerment is. For the engagement and communication, this really focuses on your performance. Were you able to deliver your presentation clearly and effectively? That includes your voice, your eye contact, not looking over your shoulder or staring back at a screen, the appropriateness of the language you use, making it relevant, making it appropriate and appealing to that audience. Avoid using really technical terms and jargon that they might not be familiar with. You want to be careful. You don't want to try to dumb it down. You want to present it to the right level of the audience, because we will have largely academics and people that are familiar with graduate research in the room that just won't be necessarily from your discipline. There are a number of accessibility and visual clarity aspects of this as well. This is the primary one, but you'll see some other aspects on the next slide as we kind of go through. We need to make sure that all elements are accessible to a broad audience, and we encourage you to make sure that what you're presenting and what you're sharing enhances the presentation. So you don't have graphics and slide material on your slide that's not relevant or important to the story you're trying to tell through your presentation. Make sure that your audio and video is clear, etc. And then we want you to inspire. That's a really hard thing, I think, for us necessarily to frame, but we want you to get the audience curious. We want you to engage them in a way that they want to learn more, to take action on your topic. That could be simply reading your thesis, a publication, going to an art exhibit, whatever that is. We want you to get them excited. Now, for accessibility, oh, and of course, I said this already, the judge's decision on these rubrics and their scoring is final. So for accessibility, we will have caption feature that's running using PowerPoint, and that will be displayed on the screen behind you. And you can see in Joshua's slide or the photo over on the right that you can see that it's actually written out as he's speaking. In addition to that, a couple of those things I just hit on for the judges' criteria. Make sure that everything's broadly accessible to the audience. Graphs, props, text, you want them to be easy to review. You don't want to be holding up something really small, as your prop, and the audience in the back of the room cannot see the world's tiniest violin. That will not work. Great song too, by the way. And make sure that you are clearly articulating and speaking and projecting. We will have a microphone for the final competition, but it's really important that you're still clear.
Yeah, great. So now what does the next couple of months look like? So you can see a calendar here. We wanted to lay this out visually to help you see how quickly this will move, and help you figure out what are the things that you need to get done in your other work, teaching, your thesis, your lab work, whatever, and how might that fit with what we have planned for you, and then what you need to get done by the preliminary competition, by the final competition. So you can see here, these cameras mark the other 2 virtual sessions that we're doing that we already talked about. These are the in-person practice sessions at the end of March, and then I guess 1 full week later, we have the preliminary competition this first week of April, and then 2 weeks later, the final competition. So when you kind of write down the dates, it looks like a long time, but when you look at the calendar, it's really not. So that's why we want you to start to work on things as we go. That way, when we have like the next session, we talk about, engagement, how to structure your presentation. You can actually have started working on it already and ask us questions more specific to what you're doing, and we can help you with that. Or you can work with us to maybe book an appointment to work with us one-on-one to get some feedback on what you're doing. We're happy to do that because we aren't judges, even though we are going to be at the preliminary competition. Sam and I won't be judging. We'll be kind of moderating the judges. So we're happy to work with you in any way that we can. Let's see. Yeah, so how should you get started? Where do you go from here? So before the next session, we want you to think about your research and ask, why should your audience care about your graduate work? Take that high-level satellite view of your research, think about it from a really big perspective, and think, what are the ways this can connect to others? How does this relate to current events, to pop culture? Just what are the things in this research that other people can care about, relate to, or some way to get them engaged? What is the big picture problem, issue, or unknown aspect you're addressing? And what is something about your research that's not obvious to someone outside your discipline? Thinking about these different things, getting a list going can give you already a lot of ideas for how to make this engaging, how to speak to an audience who isn't familiar with your work already. And as we've said, that's going to be such an important component to getting the audience interested, helping them remember what you're talking about, et cetera. So spending some time at the beginning of the process thinking through these things can help. Some common mistakes that we see. We want to lay these all out ahead of time so that you can avoid them as you work on your presentation. So sometimes we've seen a failure to engage your audience. There's no hook, or there was no attempt to make it relatable, or to again intrigue your audience, activate their curiosity. Too many analogies, or ones that are too distant from your research. We'll talk about the use of analogies later in a later session, but you want to use those strategically. One really good analogy is all you need if it works. What you should include, some other mistakes, a presentation that's structured like and, or fact after fact after fact. This is a kind of piling on of information without thinking about the strategic structure of the story that you're telling. And if you're just piling on facts, we lose sense of what's important and that narrative that is going to drive your presentation. You don't need to summarize your entire dissertation. Again, what is the most important? What's the key takeaway? Another common mistake is waiting till the end to think about your slide. You want that to be a central and integral component to your presentation if you are going to use a slide, and you should be thinking about that as well. How is the slide complementing and serving what you're saying rather than just being a kind of add-on? How is it key to what you're saying? Another mistake is bad props in scale or size, or ones that don't add to the presentation. As Sam said, we require you to approve the props with us ahead of time. So hopefully we won't have a situation where you have a prop and it doesn't add anything. We'll help you avoid that. But like Sam said, make sure you think about the visibility of those props and how you're using them. So some other mistakes we see are kind of an organizational mistake or this unbalanced presentation. So you have maybe too much introduction or not enough introduction, too much at the end, kind of bringing it all together, or not enough of that. So balancing out the content is really important. You want to make sure you're finishing strong. So if you're just sprinting at the end, if you realize, oh shoot, I have 10 seconds left and I need to get all of this in, that's going to, of course, leave on a bad note, not help your audience remember what you want to say. You want to make sure that you're able to have a measured, well-paced ending that leaves us with that strong takeaway. Other common mistakes are, of course, lack of preparation, which is why we hold these workshop series and now have the requirement for you to do a practice round with us at least once. And of course, not seeking feedback from a general audience. The more you practice this, the better you get, but the more you practice this with actually people outside of your field, general audience, maybe your parents, your family, the better you're going to be, because you'll understand more what translates to people, what doesn't, what questions they have, what they don't understand, and you can tailor the presentation with that feedback in mind.
And I'll just hop in to say real quick too, 3 minutes is such a short period of time. You really do need at least some script, or at minimum some talking points, to make sure that you are staying on track within that short period of time. You need to practice it. If you don't, it's just so easy to like try to add something new, to trip yourself up, leave something out. Like that's when we usually see people on the performance side have issues. We do have some quick FAQs here. Videos and media, we already talked about that. Just remember 15 seconds of the overall 3 minutes. Props, it's kind of the same thing. And you can see Rachel over in the photo on the right-hand side. She was describing how she would take samples, with, an instrument, be able to put those into a vial with a reagent. And then she even had a CD size instrument that she was using to test on. She had all 3 of those. So you can have more than one prop. Just make sure they're connected. But she basically got to act out the entire methodological process of taking a sample and do that in front of the audience.
Yeah, and great use of pockets too, pulling something out of
Oh,
a
yeah.
pocket.
Of course, you're only allowed one slide, but you are allowed animations. You should not be doing a million animations on a single slide. If we have fears that you're doing too many animations, we'll let you know. You do have to use PowerPoint, the other slide programs and softwares. We need to keep these all in one presentation, and for accessibility reasons. If you exceed 3 minutes, you're disqualified. It's that quick and easy. The 3 minutes, of course, starts when you start. And with that, we'll open it up to your questions with about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself again, or put your question in the chat. While we're waiting, I will say that the videos from last year's competition, I'm going to be uploading them to our YouTube channel soon, and I'll share with everybody once they're up so you can see those.
And if you're really excited, there's a full 45-hour-long video that you can go and watch every moment, see exactly what the entire thing's like. But
do we see a countdown clock while we're presenting?
You do, but my kids and I have modified said countdown clock, so you will not hear the timer go off. So we have it there. If for any reason you don't want to see it, we will take that into consideration too, and we can easily turn it around, so you don't have to worry about it. But we do want that there for you to see it. And the ones that we use do turn red when they get down under a minute. So you'll see it as white numbering until then, and then it'll turn red as you start to run out of time.
We give you the option to see it or not. That I think most people have opted to see it, even though it might be stressful or distracting. That just the risk of going over time is pretty severe. So that's a big benefit of seeing it. Other questions?
I have a quick question. So, I know that you have to be a candidate to participate. What would you say, do people normally participate in their final year as they're trying to also defend? Do people find that that's too much or that that's doable?
That's a great question. We've had people present at the whole range if they've just passed their qualifying exams, or they're actually, like last year, one person participated in the final competition who the day before defended her dissertation, and she found it to be really useful to think about how to talk about this research in this really concise way. That was actually very useful for her defense. But I think it's really up to you whether you feel like you can talk about your research in this format at this stage, and whether you would get more out of it now or later.
Yeah, I'm scheduled to defend the day after the competition. So,
oh, great. Okay.
was more trying to see if it was going to be too much. Cool,
I mean, it could be, but,
yeah.
but you know yourself best.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, hopefully the month leading up to your defense, you're feeling prepared and everything too.
Yeah.
So, and what I would say is you're welcome to continue to come if at any point you're like, okay, it's too much. We totally understand.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Alexis is just happy and excited. I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, we're excited too.
Well, great. We'll stick around. We want to be sensitive of your time. So what we'll do is we'll put up the next slide, which should have our contact information on it. And we will continue to record for another 2-3 minutes in case people have questions they want to ask, so we can make sure we capture those. We might even stay a minute or two after if people want to ask questions that aren't actually recorded. We're happy to do that too. But if you've not registered yet and you just found us through a Zoom link or a shared email or something today, if you're planning to compete or if you just want to participate in the series, register for us. So that way we can make sure that you get access to the copy of today's slides and the video and the judge's rubric and all the resources. So you get all of that information, and we will be sharing that out with all of you and everyone who registers. And if at any point you have questions, just email us.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks.